this chapbook together back in 1999. It's called Bill's Wanderings to Alaska. So enjoy listening to it while I read it. I remember talking with my brother Mike on June 9th, 1986 about what I was going to do with my life. He'd come over to Mom's house that afternoon. Not only was he concerned about my life, but also the rest of my brothers and sisters were too. I got so tired and frustrated of hearing it. I have to thank Mike for getting me going the next morning on a dream. The dream I had been thinking about for a couple of years. Yes, that dream was Alaska, a land of space and freedom, which was exactly what I needed to escape to for a while and satisfy my hungry, curious mind. It was at this point in my life that I needed solitude the most, and something told me Alaska was the place to do it. I had made arrangements that night to ride the Greyhound bus the next morning from Vancouver to Whitehorse for $99. The night before, I had some unfinished business to tend to, not the least of which was packing, but even more important was my intense desire to see my grandmother, Mummy Pat, in St. Paul's Hospital. She had a mild stroke and was very happy to see me. She also thought I had to try what I thought was best for me, and that made me very happy and confident for my plans to Alaska. She was in my prayers that night for a speedy recovery, and also all through my 3-month stay in Anchorage, Alaska. On the morning of June 10th, 1986, I woke up at 6 a.m., which gave me time to catch my 8 a.m. bus. When I left the house around 7 a.m., and kissed and hugged Mother goodbye, it was rather a shock to her in her half-wakened stage of early morning. I had not told her about my imminent departure the night before, because I thought it would have kept her up all night worrying. Anyway, she did not understand why I was leaving for Alaska at the time, but wished me a safe trip. I left the house later than I thought and had to catch a taxi at 41st and Granville. I arrived at the bus terminal just as the bus was about to leave. It seemed for at least 2 hours while riding the bus, my mind was still back at home. Did I forget anything? Did I do this? Did I do that? Along the way, I met this girl about my age from Montreal. She was headed towards Dawson in the Yukon to experience living alone in the wilderness. She had done a lot of reading on survival and decided to give it her best effort. I met another very interesting old man who called himself Stag. He was very outspoken and somewhat eccentric in his ways. Stagley usually kept a breast pocket full of religious tracts and often spoke of his spiritual convictions, regardless of what those around him thought. The day we started our friendship, which lasted for the next 10 wonderful years, he played the harmonica all the way to Whitehorse and had almost everyone singing on the bus. We became quite inseparable for a brief period of time and ended up sharing a hotel room for the next few days. One day, we decided that we would rent a car for the day and take a trip. The salesman said the trip would take around 12 hours. Instead, it took 24 hours, and we had traveled round trip 1,500 miles. At times, he was traveling at about 80 miles per hour on straightaways and knew that anything could happen to a small car of that speed. But he was crazy and having fun at the time. I insisted that I would drive most of the way because of his suspect driving skills. I had asked him to slow down on some of the rocky, dusty back roads, which eventually he spun off the gravel road and into a small ditch. His driving made me very nervous. After spinning off that gravel road, he agreed that I should drive the rest of the way to Whitehorse. Stagg fell asleep most of the way back, while I had the radio blasting and the window down to keep me awake. One other point of interest is CKLG came in very clearly up around Tungsten, Northwest Territories. We both had a long laugh about it because it was very quiet outside and we were hundreds of miles away from Vancouver. We arrived back in Whitehorse that night and had a very relaxing sleep. We had breakfast together the next morning. Then I saw him off on the bus where he was heading to Skagway, USA. I missed his company all that day and into the night. And now, as I reminisce, I can't help but shed a tear for my dear friend Stagg, who died prematurely 10 years later of prostate cancer. I was very lucky to find a place to stay through the Catholic Church that night. The Mary House was its name, and it was a couple of very peaceful days due to the fact that I was the only one there. Brother Francis was the lay worker who operated the house. He was indefatigably understanding man. He was the kind of man that a person could sit down and tell his problems to. He asked me where I was going, and I told him Anchorage, Alaska. Hitchhiking was the last thing I had on my mind, but Brother Francis thought it would be a good experience for me to feel the highway and a way to unwind for a couple of days. I thanked Brother Francis for his helpful advice that morning of June 15th, 1986, and then I was off to the freeway entrance about a mile away. Under cloudy skies, with a heavy backpack and a red apple in my hand, I was finally off to a new, mysterious destination, a land of enchantment, a place to start a new life, Anchorage, Alaska. About an hour had passed while hitchhiking when a small school bus pulled over to the shoulder and up a ways from where I had been standing. I thought to myself, it must be some children being dropped off after school. To my surprise, a young fellow about 20 years old jumped out of the bus and asked me to come aboard. At first, I was a little uneasy because there were two of them and one of me. But I was convinced that Brother Francis would pray for me to reach my destination safely. As we traveled farther on down the road, sipping Pepsis and listening to music, I felt a little more comfortable. Then a little later down the road, the fellow that I was driving pulled over to the side of the highway, and about this time, I wondered about my own safety, or at least that's the way the uneasy feeling in my stomach was saying. Fortunately, all that they wanted to do was take a picture of a glacier and get out and experience walking on it, because they both had never seen anything like it. They were both from Kansas City area, and glaciers just do not exist there. While I'm on the topic of Kansas City, now would be a good time to tell you a little about them. The fellow who was in charge of the bus, a 27-year-old, worked on the bodywork of buses on the outskirts of Kansas City, where he works and lives. He had an opportunity to drive a new school bus from where he lives in Anchorage, Alaska. He gladly accepted the offer because that way he could visit his ex-wife and child. He had not seen them in some time. He said it must be the will of God that he was headed in that direction. The friend that had been traveling with him was a 20-year-old fellow, and they both lived not too far from each other. The 20-year-old had told me that he had been on the road hitchhiking for 4 years. His parents had split up, and they did not want him anymore. He had experienced more in those 4 years than anybody would in a lifetime, he was telling me. He had been on every U.S. highway that had ever been built when the driver of the bus picked up him outside of Kansas City and asked him where he was going. He said, "As far as you're going." This is a little story on how they met. Now I will continue with my story. After our fun experience with the glacier, we were back on the highway again. We all had taken rotating shifts driving the automatic bus. That way, we all could take a good sleep in the back of the bus if we wanted to. The driver was given gas money and motel money, but the company he worked for. One night, we all shared a room together. Thinking back on how uncomfortable this other person and I slept on the floor, I should have slept in the back of the bus, where it would have been more comfortable. The next day, while traveling on the road, we missed our turn-off to Anchorage, and instead we headed towards Fairbanks. We had been on the road for about an hour to Fairbanks and decided to continue on because the driver of the bus had no due time that he had to be in Anchorage. we were all in for a treat from God, because what was ahead of us now was very breathtaking and a once-in-a-lifetime experience.